Hello, this is Dr. Janice Our Love, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we are going to be having a conversation with Dr. Yasmine Ali about how optimism affects our health. Did you know there was a relationship between how optimistic you are or how negative you are that ultimately can affect your health, especially your heart health, and even protect your health? Well, stay tuned. We are going to have a conversation about how optimism can equal a healthy heart. Stay tuned. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Remember, we are here for asking for a sister friend, and we are here every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. So tonight, we are going to be talking about how optimism equals healthy hearts. Now, I am so excited about introducing our guest for tonight. Meet Dr. Yasmine Ali. She is a cardiologist. She is a medical consultant. She is an award winning writer and best-selling author, and of course, a public speaker. What I really love about her is that she is passionate about heart health and taking care of the whole person. She is the founder and the editor in chief of Speak for the Heart, which is a healthy media brand. And she is the founder and CEO of Last Sky Writing, where she publishes books that entertain, educate, and inform. She recently launched her Positive Vibe newsletter, and we're going to be talking a lot about positive vibes tonight. And you actually may recognize her because she has appeared on CBS, ABC, C-SPAN, and has been on numerous podcasts and radio shows. She is the author of a book that I actually picked up in the library called Walk Through the Fire: The Train Disaster That Changed America. She is a graduate of Vanderbilt University, and I could go on, but let's go ahead and welcome to the stage Dr. Yasmine S. Ali, MD. Welcome, Dr. Ali.
Thank you so much, Dr. Love. It's such a pleasure to be here. I love what you're doing with this live stream. This is just such a great idea.
Oh gosh, it's just a way of really, I'm just trying to do like you. I want to inform, I want to entertain, I want to educate. And what better way to do it? People are so in the videos these days. And so if they can learn something and improve their lives and improve their health, then I'm all for it. So let's just get
Absolutely.
right into it. So you are a cardiologist. I know both of your parents are doctors. And so is that kind of the reason why you ended up becoming a doctor?
Oh, definitely. And my mother's father, my grandfather, was also a doctor, a physician in Syria. And he was really well known there, was known as the people's doctor. And so I grew up, when we visited him, that really fascinated me. And he would take me into his, exam room, seeing his patients and how that worked. So I was a very early age. And then, of course, with both of my parents being physicians, it was really interesting. When I was 3 or 4 years old, we have a picture of me at that age with my father's stethoscope in my ears, and I'm holding it to my heart. Like, I know now that is the correct position to listen to the heart. So I was listening to my heart at that age. So I think, there's some destiny there that I was meant to be a cardiologist.
That's true. That's true. So your father's a surgeon, right?
Right.
And he specialized in trauma surgery.
So he did general surgery and trauma surgery at Howard. So he actually graduated from medical school at Howard in DC, and went on to become chief surgical resident through his training. And he got some amazing training in trauma surgery because of, where Howard is located in Washington, D.C. They saw a lot of trauma cases, and he became very specialized in chest trauma and treating chest wounds, but all kinds of injuries, burn injuries, gunshot wounds, automobile accidents. He saw all of it. And my mother also trained at Howard. She was a fellow in gastroenterology. So she was the first gastroenterology fellow at Howard, as a matter of fact.
So let me tell you how I found Dr. Ali. I was just strolling through the Olathe, Kansas library when I ran across this book called Walk Through Fire. And I looked at the title, How the Train Disaster That Changed America. And so I was wondering, what train disaster? So I picked it up and started reading it. And oh my gosh, that's when I learned that her parents were on the hospital staff, a hospital that had 57 beds and 2 emergency rooms. I discovered that her parents were part of who led the recovery for so many people that were part of this train wreck. And so I got interested in it, and I kept reading and I kept reading, and I felt like I know her parents. I feel like I know the people of Waverly. And then I started to read further. I looked her up on LinkedIn and found some other things about her. That's when I discovered that she had this positive vibe thing going on. So, as I am a brain body geek and really know the effects that the mindset can have on your health, I was all in. So I'm going to ask Dr. Ali, was it the things that she saw in cardiology that led her to get into this positive vibes thing? So here is what she has to say.
Okay, yeah, a number of things came together to make me launch the Positive Vibes movement, the first part of which is this newsletter that you're a part of. And one of those being that I am a cardiologist, and we've been seeing research over the past few years showing very clearly that optimists, people who have a positive attitude on life, live longer than pessimists, an average of 15% longer than pessimists do, and they have less heart disease. And if they do have heart disease, they're less likely to die from it. And that has to do with their positive mental attitude. It's really striking, the information there. But another thing that led me to it was actually writing that book, Walk Through Fire. Because if we could switch to the slides, I'll show you one of the things that I thought of as I was writing the book. So, people always ask me, why would you write a book about a train wreck? Well, for one thing, for those who don't know, the Waverly train disaster of 1978 was when 93 L&N train cars derailed, and 2 days later, one of the propane tanks that had derailed exploded. And it took, the whole downtown Newtown section of Waverly with it, consumed with fire, created all, havoc, burn victims that my parents treated because Waverly is my hometown. And, all of these people injured. But from that disaster came so many good things for our nation. As a matter of fact, that disaster pushed forward the establishment of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. It pushed forward so many changes in rail safety and hazmat handling and, training and standards. And none of that existed in the form we have it today until Waverly.
Wow.
So that took a lot of research when I went to do this book. It was because those who read the book, I encourage you to look at the acknowledgments, because in the first paragraph of the acknowledgments, I actually talk about why I did this, and what made me write the book was the amazing story that one of the quote unquote characters in the book told me. His name is Mr. Elton Toad Smith. He went by Toad. And when he told me his story, I thought, I can't believe I'm from Waverly and I've never read this in a book, that there is no book about this. So the entire history, that had not been written before. But it did entail a level of research I just did not anticipate, thousands of hours. And I realized at some point that I was the sole repository of this information. I had to get it out in the world. And so as I was struggling with how to write this with these mountains of information, I knew I wanted to make the pages turn, make it read like a nonfiction novel, to quote Capote. And I wanted it to be a tribute to those first responders and the medical staff. And all of them came together in this tiny 2-room ER of the small community hospital in Waverly, which is just a town of 4,000 people. I mean, it's really incredible. Incredible bravery in the face of horrible circumstances. And I wanted to focus on those heroes. And I thought, well, how do I do all this? And as a matter of fact, while I was working on the book and wrestling with this question, I happened to visit the harbor of Annapolis, Maryland. And if you ever go to Annapolis and go down to the harbor, you will see that there is a very nice monument there in tribute of Alex Haley, who actually lived in Tennessee for 8 years. You know, he wrote Roots. And its official name is the Kunta Kinte Alex Haley Memorial. And at the memorial, there is this quote, "Find the good and praise it." And I saw that and I thought, that's it. That's my guiding light. And so that's how this book is written. And writing the book changed me a bit as a person as well, because I learned how much good can come from terrible tragedy. This is a quote from the book from the mayor of Waverly. This man, Mayor Buddy Frazier, was actually a young police officer at the time of the disaster in 78, was one of the first people on the scene. And now he's the mayor of Waverly. So what he told me is that's how far-reaching this thing was. Even in 1978, with communications and technology, what they were then, the whole world knew in just a little while what happened here. And what happened here should have never happened. There's no good reason for it happening. And I guess if there's one good thing about what happened, is that there's no telling how many lives have been saved over the years because of the lessons that were learned here. And so that made me think, find the good and praise it. And thinking about all that, along with my interest and passion for heart health, marrying the two gave me the idea for Positive Vibes.
Okay.
And so, Positive Vibes, I mean, if your listeners, viewers have a phone, they can snap a shot and of this QR code and subscribe immediately, or they can go directly to my website, YasmineAliMD.com, and subscribe there. And so I also have another newsletter, and I think we'll get to this more too, about heart health, Speak for the Heart. And so this is specifically focused on heart health news and insights that I give as a cardiologist on how to stay healthy. And so between that and Positive Vibes, I'm trying to reach as many people as possible with this message that there's a lot that's in our control of what we can do to improve our health, our heart health, make our hearts happier, both figuratively and physically. And that's what I'm trying to do.
So again, this book is phenomenal. I really love how she just makes it so personable, and it's really good reading. So in the book, she talks about one of the characters. Again, I feel like I know everybody who was a part of this story because she did such a good job of developing the characters. I mean, it was real life. She did a lot of research. So she talked about, in particular, this individual named Toad. And during the fire, his hands were burnt so bad that they literally had to be rebuilt. They had to be completely covered with skin again. And while he was in the hospital trying to recover from his injuries, because most of the people were burnt to where they were unrecognizable. And he talked about the fact that he just was completely depressed. He didn't want to be there. He didn't want to talk to anybody. He didn't want to be around anybody. And he realized that he needed some help. So a psychiatrist came to see him and talked to him about some things. And when he started focusing on the positive, it made him start to feel so much better, and it helped in his healing. And he was able to come back and be a blessing to somebody else. So she's going to tell us a little bit more about some of the characters in her book, or some of the individuals. It's a true story. So these are real people. So let's hear what she has to say about what happened with some of the people in the book?
That's exactly right. And, as a matter of fact, both Toad Smith and Frank Craver, who are featured in this book and who were burn victims from this tragedy, what's striking about them is how positive they were, how they came out of it, I really think, because of their positive mental attitudes. And they went on to live incredible lives. They're still alive today. I mean, Frank Craver is in his 80s and Toad Smith is 91.
Oh,
And they're
wow.
still, yes, they're still living and working and doing all they can. And you talk to them, and they're amazing men in how they have faced, life after this terrible tragedy. They just didn't let it slow them down. After they got out of the hospital, they went back to doing whatever they could do. And I have asked them about this, and they talk about, well, they just love life. They want to help other people. And I think that's a big part of developing optimism, is a servant's heart, if you will, because when you're not focused on yourself all the time, it's a lot easier to be more optimistic. And I mean, so, having role models like that I was working with when I was writing this book really had an impact on me. So, when we talk about the effects of optimism on health, we have all the studies and we can go into that, but just what I've seen with my own eyes, I can tell you, in my patients, in my friends, in my acquaintances, the people who are optimists do better in every measure.
So I was interested because my sister had a heart attack at one time. And as I remember the conversations I had with her about her health and about what her doctor said, I don't remember her doctor talking anything about positive vibes. And I just have to wonder, is it something that's taught in medical school? Let's hear what Dr. Ali has to say.
I don't know how much they're teaching it now. They certainly didn't when I was in medical school. And in fact, this is something that I first saw about 3 or 4 years ago at a cardiology conference. And there was one session about the effects of optimism on the heart. So it's not really widespread. If you're not seeking it out, you might not get that knowledge or awareness. And so it certainly hasn't become mainstream yet. But that's one of the things I'm trying to do, is let more people know about this and how important it is. You will occasionally find cardiologists and also some surgeons who will tell you that if you have a positive outlook before you go into surgery, before you go into the operation, you are going to do better. In fact, we talked about my father being a trauma surgeon who's also a general surgeon. And this is an interesting story. Way back when, he had a patient in Waverly, I believe, on whom he was going to operate. And he went in to visit her the day before, like he would on all his patients. And she was saying, I'm not going to make it. I just know I'm not going to make it. And he canceled the operation.
Wow.
Because that's how much he believed in the mental attitude of the patient. Because if a patient tells you they're not going to make it, they really might not. And if they say they are going to make it, they have a much better chance. So, I think that physicians, may know this intuitively, may have seen it with experience, but I don't know that it's something that's taught, in a widespread way.
But the data is definitely out there to support that. Dr. Ali is no longer seeing patients, and so she spends most of her time writing. So I wanted to know, what was the conversation that she had with an individual who was experiencing heart trouble? What kinds of things would she talk about to help them to develop a more positive mindset? Let's hear what she has to say.
I think there are a few things that you can do immediately, and one is to look for the silver lining. You may be going through a difficult situation. We all go through those situations. And so is there anything good about that difficult situation? Is it going to turn out for the better in your life? Do you need to go through that uncomfortable change? If you have experienced the death of a loved one, as many of us have, do you have good memories of that person that you could call on to comfort you? Maybe something about them that makes you smile. And that's a comforting memory. And that's a way that we can have a positive outlook on something that's just part of life. Another big thing that you can do is call a friend, and call them not to complain, because that can spiral. That can spiral into a negative outlook. Oh, the world is terrible. No, call them to talk about your garden or your recipe, or what was good that happened today. What happened in your life that was good today? That's something that I like to ask people, and it really gets a good positive conversation. It gets you a positive vibe started. And you can watch. Okay, the third thing you can do is watch something that you think is funny. Watch or read something funny, because there is a lot to say about laughter being the best medicine, and that'll get you releases those endorphins that puts you in a better mood, and suddenly you can cope a little better with the stresses of life. And the more that you try to do these things, I think the fourth thing I would recommend is something I do every night, and that's a practice of gratitude. So every night, and it helps you fall asleep too, every night before you go to bed, and you can do this before or after or during your prayers, if you say prayers at night, just think of 3 things that you're grateful for in your life. If you start doing that every night, again and again, you will see really how much you have in your life that is good and that is positive, and that in itself can change your attitude and your outlook.
I love it, because there's some truth in birds of a feather flock together, because when you're around people who are joyful, who are happy, who have a positive outlook on life, it tends to make you that way. And when I have sourpuss friends hanging around me, I was like, look, we got to get you out of this, because
That's right.
it's going to take us all down, right? Oftentimes, when we are trying to help clients make changes in their lives, many times we can end up giving them a list of to do's and don't do. So, for instance, someone who is dealing with cardiology challenges, I know there's a long list of lose weight, stop smoking, eat right, exercise. Doctors will tend to tell you the things that you should do and you should not do. And oftentimes that can cause guilt in the clients. They don't need to hear all of that. So, talking with Dr. Ali about how some doctors respond when it comes to making those behavioral changes, I noticed that she has a pet peeve. You got to hear about this.
So, Dr. Love, I'm smiling so big because you just hit on one of my pet peeves, and you don't even know that you do. We didn't discuss this before. You really hit on one of my pet peeves, and that is that we in medicine do too much of don't do this and don't do that, and you're a bad person and you get blamed because you've done all these bad things. No. That does not work as well as what you're already doing right, and how can we improve on that. Let's focus on the positive first. And that, in fact, is why I started my Speak for the Heart newsletter, because I didn't see enough of that coming out of mainstream, heart associations, heart societies that educate the public. It's so often don't do this and don't do that. And I wanted an alternative to that. I wanted my patients and my former patients and everyone who reads that newsletter to see that there are so many positive things that you may already be doing and not realize it, or just a tiny tweak in what you're already doing can bring you great benefits. So, instead of getting down on yourself about your weight or how much sugar you had yesterday, let's focus on today. Let's focus on what we're doing.
Exactly.
So I think that whole guilt complex and worry, and that is not good for your health. And people rebel against that too. So, they're just like, well, I'm going to do what I want to do.
So, being a woman who is an African American woman, I was curious about what Dr. Ali would talk about when it came to the health of Black women in particular, and the things that they experience in the doctor's office, whether it is systemic racism or just not being fully heard. So I really love the conversation that we had about the differences that Black women experience versus white women.
It is, yes. Heart disease is still the number one killer of women. It kills more women than breast cancer. It kills more women than lung diseases, or in fact, and I think the next 3 or 4 causes combined, heart disease kills more women than that. So 1 out of every 3 women currently will die from heart disease. And I think not enough women know that statistic, even though we have been talking about it for over 20 years, but still it's hard to grasp because women are shielded from heart disease for at least the first half of their lives. That's because of the estrogen. And then when we go through the change, we suddenly become at risk of heart disease as much as men do. And so that's when it sort of comes as a surprise to a lot of women. Women are also more at risk of stroke than men are, and Black women in particular are at risk of stroke. Black women are also, unfortunately, more likely to have poor outcomes when they do have heart disease. There are a lot of factors that go into that. Many of them are what we call social determinants of health, that they may not have the same access to care. And when they do access care, and this is very interesting, study I saw recently, which I think is, it's a terrible result. But what I saw in this study is that even when Black women access the same care, the same doctor as a white woman or a white man, they are not offered the same options as the same guideline standard of care. And so what we are trying to raise awareness among physicians that you may have bias, and if you will just follow the guidelines, look at the color of the patient in front of you, follow the guidelines for everyone, and people will do better. So that's a form of systemic racism that Black women are also facing.
We do have a question from one of our viewers. She says that number with heart problems, does that include biases with the doctor not taking people of color serious?
Yes. And I've seen that with my own eyes. So we know anecdotally and with observational studies that is happening. So when Black women, for instance, present with heart disease, and women in general can present differently with heart disease, particularly heart attacks, than men do. So they may not have that crushing chest pain, that we see in the movies. They may be more likely to have numbness or pain in their jaw or in their shoulder or down their arm, or they may have nausea and vomiting and just feel really tired. And those can all be signs of a heart attack in a woman who had, you have to put the picture together. And sometimes, unfortunately, when a woman of color presents to the ER with those symptoms, they may be dismissed as, well, they're just complaining. And it's maybe not taken as serious. They have some other things going on. They have problems at home. There is all of this bias that goes through, and doctors are human beings too. So they're subject to the same biases as everybody else in society. And this may be going through their minds. And so we have seen that Black women and other women of color are dismissed from the emergency department at higher numbers than their white counterparts.
I am currently a subscriber to Dr. Ali's Positive Vibe newsletter. And what I really like about it is it just really brightens your day. So as I was talking with her about her mindset in how she puts together that newsletter and the different things she shares. In fact, the one that she shared most recently had information about the eclipse that was coming. And then there were some things about pets. It's just a very positive thing. So I asked her, what is her intention as far as the Positive Vibe newsletter? Let's hear what she had to say.
Thank you. So I'll tell you, one of the things that guides this newsletter is the fact that we need to share more good news, that we all could use more good news. And, because there's a newsletter, I try to think about what can I bring people that will lift their spirits, that will make them smile. So music to my ears is when I hear back from one of my readers of the newsletter, you made me smile this week. Your newsletter in my inbox makes me smile. That is what I'm trying to do, is just bring a ray of sunshine to everyone's life once a week in their inbox, so it's not a bill, it's not an alarming message about what you must do or not do. It's just fun, and we need that. We desperately need that today. So that's what there's no politics, there's no, no dirty laundry. It's just good news.
I love it. I love it. I've been enjoying getting it.
Thank you.
So before we close this wonderful conversation, I wanted to remind you again how you can access Dr. Yasmine Ali's newsletter, Positive Vibes. So you can either go to her website, which is www.yasmine, which is spelled Yasmine, Ali, ALIMD.com. So once again, that's www.yasminealimd.com. Also, if you are interested in more information about heart health, I would highly recommend you also subscribe to her Speak for the Heart publication, which you can also find on her website, or you can simply go and scan the barcode there. Now, as we were finishing up the conversation, I had discovered something just by going to her website, and that is she is writing a fiction book. I am so amazed at her wonderful gifts and talents, and I'm kind of excited about this book that's coming up. So she's going to tell us a little bit about that book. I kind of surprised her with that, but she's going to tell us a little bit about that book.
Yes. So my next book, which I hope to have out in September, is called The View from the Cliffs, and it's a novel. And so here's the tagline: 3 physicians, 3 continents, 2 decades, 1 love story. So that's what's coming next.
No, I have to imagine your imagination. Did you come up with all this, or is it based on true stories, or what is? I'm
It's no. So after I wrote the Waverly train disaster book, that was really hard, and I had to fact check everything, and that was true history. I thought, you know what? After this, I'm going to make it all up. I'm going to write a book where I can make it all up, and that's what I did with this novel. So.
Oh my God. You have to let me know when you get that one released, because I'm going to have you back on here because after I read it though.
So here's another thing: if your listeners, when they subscribe to Positive Vibes, they will see a way to get a little excerpt from that novel that's coming out, and they will be updated on how to when the book comes out and all the releases and all that information.
I love it. I love it. I just love how your brain works. Again, it's a nice break from all that technical stuff and all that medical stuff that you sit and make up characters and give them a story. I love it. I absolutely love it. I am just so grateful that we had her as our guest today. If you're interested in being a guest on our show, then I invite you to visit pearlsperfectedinstitute.com. But thanks again for joining us on today. And thank you, Dr. Ali, for such a wonderful conversation about how optimism can equal healthy hearts. See ya.